it went.
Okay, perfect.
Okay? Bye.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
Alrighty. Welcome, everyone. Let's give it a minute or two. I am so excited for this chat. Welcome, welcome. All right.
Just hearing the sounds of New York in the
Oh my
background.
God, are you really hearing that siren? Ah,
Yes.
it's coming through. Okay, is it like bad? Should I put in my AirPods?
No, it just clearly you're in New York. That's all.
Wow, it's so funny because for me that's actually really faint. Maybe I'm just so used to it, but my window's open. So, welcome to New York, everyone, by way of phone. Cool. Let's give it just one more minute and see if we get any other folks joining us before we dive in. Welcome, welcome. And I'm guessing, Valentina, it still sends out that ping when we're getting started, right? Okay, cool. I see some other folks joining. Just want to make sure we've got critical mass. All right, beautiful. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining this chat. My name is Rachel, and I am the founder and CEO and career coach at Woken. We are excited to be back on Fishbowl. And by the way, if the background noise is too loud, please tell me, Amy, because I could shut this window.
It's a lot. I would maybe shut the window.
Okay, give me
There's
a
like
second, guys.
multiple
This is
sirens
New York
happening.
City, right? Oh,
Uh-huh.
goodness gracious.
It sounds
We're
like you're
having
hanging out outside of a hospital.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. All right. Let's troubleshoot. Okay, we got this. Anyway, we are excited to be here, and please do click our profiles to be notified of future conversations. I'm usually here every 2 to 3 weeks with different career chats. And today we're discussing really just re-entering the workforce. And what does that mean if you took a break, if you stepped away? When are you ready to come back? What are all the ins and outs that people think about? Amy's going to walk us through her journey a bit. And yeah, this is really just meant to be an open and honest conversation to help any and all of you who are either partners to someone who's reentering, or if you are reentering the workforce yourself, or even just proactively preparing, any of the above. We're gonna talk about that. And so we're gonna do sort of like an interview of Amy for about 40 minutes, and then we're definitely going to have that audience Q&A about 20 minutes at the end. And at that point, you can either raise your hand to join the stage, or you can direct message me your question. So I will introduce myself super briefly, and then we will hear from Amy. So I'm a career coach. I've run a business for 6.5 years now. We help a wide variety of different types of professionals with a wide variety of different types of career goals and career challenges. Our forte is career exploration to help you fine tune your direction. My career, I started out at Goldman Sachs and then Bridgewater Associates, and I also have a tech MBA from NYU Stern. So that is the very quick and dirty on me. I also am a PCC certified coach from the ICF. And so, Amy, please tell us who you are, and then I'm going to dig in and ask you lots of questions.
Sure, sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Amy. I live in Austin, Texas. I did start off my career, used to live in New York. I actually found Rachel through an NYU alumni event. So I am also an NYU alumni. Went undergrad to NYU for communications and business, and then started doing that immediately afterwards with my career kicking off at Nickelodeon, doing digital ad sales. And then I have worked as a salesperson in advertising media and media tech since then, from digital publishers to media companies, and then also to accessibility tools. Like my most recent job was doing captions and subtitles and global transcription, and I ran the media group. So when y'all turn on like captions on Netflix, which I think most of us do, There's probably about a 1 in 4 chance that I sold those. So that's a little bit of my background. And then I in my career have pretty much almost exclusively worked with enterprise and key account brands. So pretty much if y'all name a big media company or a big brand that does advertising, I've worked with them.
Amazing.
Um, yeah.
And
And
so just
I
remind us situationally, you've been sort of out for how long?
last April. So it's been a
Okay.
year and like a month,
Okay.
2 months.
Okay. All right. So let's dive in. Let's try to understand. We're gonna go through Amy's story a little bit and then tease out, what can that mean for all of you. So when did you leave the workforce and why? What triggered your, mindset to say, I need to step away? Was it hard to step away? Tell us about like kind of when you left.
Sure. So I was doing media tech sales at a tech company, the one that I mentioned earlier that does the captions and subtitling and transcription. And I was the number one salesperson at the company, getting lots of praise and accolades and getting paid pretty well. And so that was all really wonderful. And I had my second baby while I was there. And when right before I went on maternity leave, as has happened with many of the media and tech companies in the past 2, 3 years, the company had its first round of layoffs. I was not a part of that, but it just shook everything up at the company. And I went on mat leave kind of with everything being a bit of a hot mess. And then when I came back, it was still a hot mess. And they had another round of layoffs, and it was just it was a very unstable environment. And while it's like nice to know that your job is secure, when you are still waking up in the middle of the night, when you are breastfeeding, when you are hormonal, when you have all the pressure of having the highest quota at the company, and then when your peers have just left and they're asking you to work their accounts and, take everything over and just feeling like nothing can drop. I was just incredibly stressed. I was waking up in the middle of the night just panicking about like, you know, what's the procurement person that was kind of difficult on that last call from Disney going to say? And like, is this
Hmm.
going to derail this huge deal that I've been working on for months that's like so meaningful to our company right now? And it just became like too much pressure. Is really the best way I could say it, where something had to give. And I was trying a lot to figure out how to navigate that without stepping away. And my kind of final straw, once I came back from mat leave, I had friends that said, just hang in there, tough it out. Like, this is okay. This is going to happen. And then and again, I'm still getting praise and making good money. So that's what's like what kept me around. Right. But at my second daughter's first birthday, when I'm watching her and she's blowing out the candles, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel the exact same way that I did right when I came back from mat leave. And if my daughter was in this position that I am in my career right now and I saw her, what would I tell her to do?
Mm.
And that's when I was like, oh, I have to resign. So that's what did it.
Let me ask you this. Was there any talking to your manager or the team? Like, was there any potential like support where you were before? Like, did you explore that and it was like, look, there was nothing they could do? Or, yeah, like, how did you
No,
know?
I mean,
You know,
that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, one good thing about being the number one salesperson at the company is you're kind of untouchable in a lot of ways. So, like, for example, when the company was like, okay, we need everybody to come back into the office, I was like, look, I have to pump to breastfeed, or I have to pump every such and such hours, so I'm commuting into the office to then go into the mom's nursing room for like half the day almost. So
right.
that doesn't really make sense. So they were already like reneging on those kinds of restrictions. And they were asking me to lean in. They said, we want you to be in management. We want you to do more. Like, everything's kind of, people are kind of running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And they're like, would you like to help out? And I was like, I'm actually not in a position right now where I can lean in. Like I'm kind of in a more lean out position.
Right.
But I did try to make that very clear, but the leadership was also, the turnover kept happening because of the restructurings. So in a year and a half, I had four different managers, which,
Got it.
so that there's not any continuity to really even like, I did have to set boundaries and be like, please don't text me on the weekend, or, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. Like, I'm just trying to separate church and state. Um, but it's a little bit more challenging when the industry and the company is like, going through challenges. So,
Right.
it's like,
Right.
it's not just me, it's kind of everybody.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you knew you were ready, but to your point, there were things that couldn't be changed. Couldn't, it's not a matter of more support. It's just this was the situation and you knew it was time. So how'd you know you were ready to start coming back to work?
So I actually, after work, I had such bad anxiety. I was really tense and did, like I said, I wasn't sleeping well. I was just having a lot of problems, and it was creeping out of my work life and into like my home life, where so I actually I have disability insurance. I highly recommend, if anybody here does not have disability insurance, to get it, because God knows what might happen, and you want to be able to insure your income. So I actually applied for disability insurance for an anxiety disorder, and like kind of postpartum anxiety mixed with just the circumstances, and that insurance claim was granted after they spoke to my employers, they spoke to my therapist. They're like, okay, this is legit. She really did have a disability for a while and was not able to work. And so that gave me some runway to kind of get myself centered. And that took me probably about 6 months, to be honest, that I was like, okay, I'm okay now. I'm good. And then I started looking into, well, if I do go back into the workforce, what is that going to look like? Because I don't want to find myself in the same position again, where I have such a high stress pressure role and responsibilities. Um and so I started this journey. I'm not necessarily like, yes, I'm ready to pull the trigger and I want to go back to work right now. And I feel very lucky that I have a partner that is also working. And so we're able to kind of weather this stage right now. But,
Right.
I went from being a pretty high earning person to zero.
Right.
So it's figuring out that there's something in between, and what that looks like, that I can still be present for my family and be happy and be balanced, but also have like a meaningful career that I'm getting paid,
Right.
that's
And
really
I think
important.
the key is that maybe you weren't ready to start working, but you were ready to start thinking about it. And I think you've done a great job of being proactive and exploring. And the what I want to dive into is Amy's process and steps to figuring out where she wants to go next, because she didn't just jump into her job search. She was like, what's my direction? And that deserved a lot of time and thought, which was amazing. And it's really great to learn from that. So you didn't need to be ready to start working immediately, but you were ready to explore. So tell us about that, right? What steps have you taken that have helped you in this, exploration journey of figuring out where you want to go next? And yeah, like what types of, I mean, we've done a lot of this together, but activities, that you think have helped you the most in exploring your next direction?
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing that I did was reach out to some like trusted friends and mentors, and I just started putting the feelers out there, asking folks if anybody had an executive coach that they knew and trusted, and that they loved. And then I also just so happened to see the NYU alumni email that was like, look, folk, interested in going through a career change, like tune into this webinar. And I really, really loved that Woken was a program and had structure to it, as opposed to most of the executive coaches that I spoke with that were like, we're going to start off each session by being like, what do you want to talk about today? And I was like, I've had plenty of therapy now at this point, clearly with the anxiety disorder diagnosis. I don't need that. I literally need a roadmap to help me figure out by the end of this, what is the next career move that I should be doing, regardless of what time I decide to pull the trigger. I want to at least have a plan in place,
Right.
that I know where I want to go. And with Woken, there's a lot of tons of questions. I mean, tons of questions. I wasn't expecting there to be so many questions. But it's really all about like what drives you? What do your friends tend to come to you for advice about? What were the things about your last job that you liked the most? And kind of asking very similar questions from a different angle to then hone in and kind of narrow down to, well, these are some potential jobs that would be a good fit. And then the same exercise again for like, these are the type of industries that would be a good fit. And so I've kind of been able to narrow down from that point. And then like the part that's been like the most meaningful to me has been the like informational interviews. Um, so meaning, and Rachel, I don't know if you want to elaborate on like how you set up the informational interviews, or you want me to kind of talk through what that's looked like.
Yeah, I mean, just for everyone listening, right? So, an informational interview is sort of a 20 to 30-minute chat where you're going to meet with somebody who's in the role that you're considering pursuing. And so, just to make it perfectly clear, when Amy began this journey, she kind of was like, look, I don't want to go do the same thing that I've done. And so what do I want to do? And it's an open-ended journey where you don't have that answer. So you have to explore, right? And so information, she was referring to the reflection, there's self-reflection, but there's also, how do I understand what these jobs are all about? So the informational chat is an amazing way to understand different roles in different industries by learning from people, directly. So yeah, share about that.
Yeah. So I was like, look, as a salesperson, my biggest strengths are the part of the job that brings me the most joy. And this is different for everybody, but for me, the part of sales that I love is the pitch. I'm a former theater kid. I'm like, let me basically get up and do like an improv exercise. I love the pitch of sales. And then I also love the schmooze. I love the relationship building part of the job. I'm very good at it. I've been doing it my entire I literally had a job doing it for Nickelodeon before I graduated college. So I've been doing that, and now I'm 36. So I've been doing that for several years, and I love it. It doesn't really feel like work. The part of sales that I was like, it's maybe not the healthiest for me, has been kind of the element of the quota, this big looming number that's over your head all the time. That's like you're judging how well or poorly you're doing at your job. But honestly, if you don't have good boundaries, it can creep into like your own self-worth, just by how you're performing against this quota. And that I did not think was very healthy for me. And also just the cold calling grind that, every salesperson kind of had to do it. I'm not crazy about that. So I narrowed down to other roles that kind of could be a good fit for me, and was looking at business development, was looking at just a kind of renewals growth role within the company. I've also looked at being on account management, customer success, moving into sales management, maybe doing consulting, even switching over to real estate and using kind of you can still use the schmooze and the pitch in real estate. You can convert those skills to many different industries. And so I've
Right.
had a bunch of like coffees, lunches, calls with folks, and it's been crazy helpful. Like you talk with people and you're like, you could go into a conversation like sales enablement, for example, which I don't know if y'all don't know sales enablement, it's when you train salespeople internally on how to pitch the product, and you teach them new things. And I thought, oh, maybe that would be cool. And then I started talking to folks who are doing it, and I'm like, oh, right, you have to also not just be a great salesperson, you also have to like make lesson plans and like build, like become a teacher truly. And I was
Right.
like, oh, wait a second, like that's way more work and seems like it also wasn't as high paying, which I'm very money motivated. So having those conversations and being like, oh wow, you really love your job, you really are working long hours, you're really getting paid this much, this is what gives you meaning, like sounds great, happy for you, not for me.
Right.
So
Right.
those
You're
were really, really helpful.
dissecting, what I love about what you're doing well in this process, which is you're understanding yourself really deeply. What do I want? What do I like? What am I good at? What do I not like? What's important to me? And then you're objectively understanding what these roles are really like, and you're comparing. And that's what exploration is. You're understanding yourself and you're understanding the roles, and you're doing all of that at the same time. So it's so amazing, and how it helped you learn new things, and narrow down the roles. Take us like a click deeper, right? So, I always think about there's role, there's industry, and there's environment, right? So for the role, you were thinking about, should I be an independent contributor versus a manager? Do I want quotas? Do I want not quotas? Do I want to be part-time or full-time? So in terms of the nature of like the day-to-day, how have you drilled into kind of what you want in, in that role? Like, how'd you get to know more um, of what you wanted just from the role itself?
Well, I think that to kind of answer your question with a bit of a different angle, no matter, there's like kind of in the informational interviews that I've done so far, there has been a common thread that I have noticed, and it is regardless of whether you're full-time, part-time, whatever, especially for high achieving parents and in particular moms, like when you have to make that transition from just being like hustle hustle grind, I'm working, and just work and play, to then also having this other very much full-time job of being a parent, that the folks that I spoke to that seem to be like thriving in that role, they all had an executive coach, and they also all most of them also had a therapist. And it sounds like the executive coach's role, it really for them narrowed down to having somebody to just say like, no, don't do that. You don't need to show up to that meeting, or you don't need to answer that Slack right now. Or literally, it's like somebody, it's like a little elf in your ear just saying, like, don't, no. That's like, stop. Is in and learning to set these boundaries. And so, to answer your question of like how I've approached this moving forward, I've realized kind of that it's almost for me more about being able to set good boundaries from the start than it is about the actual work I'm doing and whether I'm full-time or part-time.
Yeah.
Like that comes from within, or if you don't have that within, that comes from the executive coach that you're working with,
Right.
to know when to draw the line for yourself and your own mental well-being, and kind of what how to still be like, I'm doing a good job, I've done the best I can, or I'm willing to do, but it's within these limits.
Right.
um
Totally. I mean, I think you're recognizing there's major choice with work life balance, work life boundaries, and there's your control, your boundaries, your choices when you say no. But there's also the nature of, all right, do I want a quota, or do I just want part time or
yes.
full time? And so it is a combination of, what do these roles actually look like, and what do I want on paper that's going to set me up for success, the actual choice of the structure. And then yes, when I get in there, I need to not let it take over me. So I think that that's great. In terms of the industry, I think this is interesting
Yeah,
because you mentioned, the company stability, right? So there's role, and then there's the industry of like, you're seeing layoffs, you're seeing sectors that are either shrinking or growing. And so when you think about going into your next industry, like, it's so interesting because yes, we want to, some of us are just like, I need any job that's hiring, and we don't always have the choice. But I think you're taking this like extra strategic approach to say, I only want to hang my hat in this office that I know is going to do well. And you're like treating it like I'm an investor, like asking these questions of like, is this company going to succeed before I even step foot in
right.
there? So, how are you thinking about not just role, but industry stability and company, and where you are willing to even put
Sure.
yourself?
Well, with the economy right now, I am, and my husband, we've just seen that, like, as exciting as startup culture is, and especially in Austin, Texas, where we are, like, everybody's startup, it's like very startup friendly town. It's very risky right now, it and with the wanting stability right now, that going for a company that is still kind of pivoting or figuring out, is there a product market fit for this, or who is our target audience, or will this even sell, does anybody even want this product? It's like I've done that, and I'm like, I now want to go to a place that they're like, this is what we do, we're very good at it, we know we have a product market fit, we know we have a customer for it. Obviously, I know even big and small companies have done restructuring, but right now, I don't want to work somewhere that is in the middle of, like, its awkward teenage years, where it's just kind
Right.
of figuring out who it is. That's, like, not right for me. I don't have the, like, emotional bandwidth to deal with that kind of instability in the company. So I would be looking for something more established. And then also, like, from a subject matter too, I had a job a couple of years ago that was a, a social network for IT professionals. And it was, I don't really particularly care about IT. It's not a passion for me. And I learned from doing that job that no matter what I'm selling or representing, that I actually have to be passionate about the product, and not just that, oh, it's a great product. No, I need it to be something that I would look at in my personal time. I would engage with it. It's like a part of my set of hobbies. So
Right.
I narrowed down to, like, industries for me personally, being in, like, media, entertainment, wellness, lifestyle, fashion, sustainability, beauty. Those are some of the things that I'm like, okay, I can get down. Real estate as well, I was open to that. But those are areas that, like, if you catch me outside of work, that's what I'm doing. And so that's the areas that I want to focus when it comes to doing the work.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you want to align personally, but you're also like, look, they've got to sort of have their shit together. And I love thinking like an investor when you come into these companies. Like, how do you know that they're actually succeeding? Like, a lot of job seekers now can be put into this position of like, are you looking at their financials? Are you asking them about their revenue goals? Are you asking about like any success metrics? And I know you've mentioned certain phrases or like red flags that you listen for in an interview, like, fail fast, or if they have processes, or if they're pivoting all the time. And to your point, if they're figuring out their customer, it's like, if you were an entrepreneur, if you were a founder, if you were a CEO, if you were an investor, how would you think about if a company was succeeding, right? So, Amy, is there anything else on your mind? Like, what would you listen for? What would you ask? Like, how would you assess that that's somewhere, that you're willing to join? Like, what are the red and the green flags that you would notice? Like,
I
what
mean,
is,
like,
what, yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, to your point, like, being startups, I mean, like, obviously, if you're a salesperson, like, how many people are on your sales team? How long have they been there? Like if they're, and also of course, if it's an open role, why did the person before me leave this job? Because it could be something, especially in sales, where like it's a trap from the beginning. Like they maybe had an unrealistic expectation of what their salesperson it was going to be able to do. You could have the greatest salesperson in the world, and if your product doesn't work, or there's no demand there, or like, AI can literally do that and it's open source and free right now, then maybe that's not the right area. But like to your point where I said, like, if a company's telling me like we have like a fail fast approach, I mean, that is awesome. And like, I would be cool with that if I didn't have two toddlers, where like, or and
Right, you
maybe
got to
like,
think about your life
right,
stage, and maybe
right.
someone is or is not at home with children, but to your point, what you have to ask yourself, what level of stability am I looking for right now? What level of chaos can I tolerate right now?
And just being an individual contributor in sales in general is pretty stressful and chaotic. I mean, you have very large commissions that can come and go in one conversation, and how to not like let that volatility affect you is a skill that I am still working on. And like that's part of the reason I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't go back into sales. But yeah, I mean, you even if the company is solid, it's just the nature of that job is still going to experience those kinds of waves of wins and losses. So if you can help control that a little bit, or what, if you're willing to take that roller coaster, then in my opinion, you better be like in the C-suite or be like one of the co-founders, where like the equity of that win and the upside of that win is really going to pay out for you, versus like if you're just like a salaried or commissioned employee, that like, I don't know, that volatility, I don't think you reap the reward as much with a company that's still figuring itself out.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I love it. You've also talked about just how to show up to work differently, pre-kids, post-kids, like anything else to touch on there, like what made you
Yeah,
successful previously and how do you feel like you're going to operate now coming back
totally.
in?
Totally. Well, I'm a go-getter. I always have been. I'm somebody that like, I don't need much coffee. Like, don't give me much coffee. It's not a good idea because I'm already operating at a pretty high frequency. And I went to school in New York, interned in New York, started my career off in New York, where it's not a place that's known for work-life balance or setting good boundaries. It's a place that's like lean in, hustle, like, grind it out. I literally had like Etsy a sign made during one of my jobs that said hustle, that I sat next to my desk. And I have realized now that while that attitude and mentality has been very fruitful for me, it's made me be the top performing person because I am just grinding it out. I'm out working my peers, and I want to work smart, but I also am working really hard. That mentality is great until for me, not even being a mom of two, it was becoming a mom of, or excuse me, not becoming a mom of one, but becoming a mom of two, was when I was like, oh no, like this is not sustainable anymore. I can't do it. So I'm literally having to unlearn some of these habits that have led to me being so successful up to this point professionally, so that I mean, I'm redefining what does success mean to me. Does it mean a bigger paycheck? Does it mean like going to 150% of your quota, or does it mean having that extra time to do other things in your life that are meaningful to you, out that don't pay you, right?
Right,
And so
absolutely. Yeah.
so that's kind of been like, I just like this whole hustle, lean in thing is like, I'm teaching myself, and with your help too, to like not be in hustle mode, or at least be better at learning how to turn that off.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that your greatest strength that you've been tapping into is just your self-awareness. You're really getting to know yourself and the ability to even recognize that, yeah, I'm going to unlearn this, right? Or I have to operate differently, or I want to operate differently. I mean, some element you're being forced or pushed to do it, but I really think you're trying to get to know how should I operate, and really take that zoomed out approach at all of this, right? So I think that's really amazing. I did see a hand raised, so please feel
I
free to
saw
raise
that
your hand
too.
again. If I don't know if that was meant to be a hand or not, but please do feel free to raise it again if I missed it. Um, and in the meantime, we'll keep going, but please
There was
do ask your
also
questions. Yeah, go
there
ahead.
was there was also I saw a question pop up a couple minutes ago, and I'm not sure how to like get it back afterward.
Oh, was it a DM?
It was a DM, but I don't see.
Okay, great. So Amy, go to your top right. You should see that little messagey inbox thing,
Yes.
and then see if the DM is there and we
Oh,
can answer.
maybe it wasn't a DM. Maybe it was just like an open comment. But I did see like a pop up of copy when we were chatting. But yes,
Okay,
I
okay.
know there was.
Well, do send us your DMs again, and then if you have any questions, please do raise your hand. We are very much open to the Q&A. But yeah, in the meantime, Amy, you have also mentioned like mothers that you talk to, you see trends, you see similarities in their support systems. Tell me,
Mm-hmm.
what have you seen, from mothers around you, and what's working for them?
Sure. Well, I shared this before that and this isn't just exclusive to mothers, right? Like I think this is just parents in general, or just if you have some other big things in your life that are taking priority, and that could be that you're like having to caregive for your family, or you have somebody else in your life that like you cannot give your all to your job sustainably anymore. And that's when I think for me that's where the coach comes in. But yeah, my female friends that are moms of young kids, they've, like I said, they have all pretty much, they all have executive coaches, and a lot of them, most of them have therapists. And I even have one friend who, she's a VP at a pretty big company right now, and she told me she's going back to a role being in first tier management rather than second tier, so that she's managing salespeople directly rather than managing managers. Just because she's like, I just need less people to be calling on me. I need less like shoulder tapping during the day of on like my Slack and digital, that people can't just aren't just contact me all day with questions. She's intentionally doing that and taking a little less money because she needs it because like I said, it's like, it's not just all about money. It's about like, what are you doing with that money? What do you even want to do? Like, what is the point? And like, what do you like? All right, what would you what would that money do for you? How would you like to use that? And if the answer is like, well, I'd probably just want to like take more time and like be with my family more or whatever, you don't need that raise to do that, you
Right.
know?
Right. No, it's such a balance because there are some people they want the promotion and the raise, and there's increased responsibilities with increased pay. And then to your point, is there maybe decreased pay and decreased responsibilities? And I think people, it's okay to rethink, what salary do I need? And especially in a tough job search market, I think looking into part-time, or freelance or consulting or any other creative types of work,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to look into a lesser, responsibility, but I think seeing the grace that comes with that, which it gives you the free time, and how much security do I really need? So
I have.
sometimes we have the
Mhm.
choice to take less, sometimes we don't have that choice, but the ability to just rethink, what salary do I actually need? And is that worth all the responsibilities it comes with? I think that's great. And,
Right.
I think for you, you were really open minded. Like, I think, something that's really beautiful to call out is, you looked into real estate, and like maybe you had like one or two networking calls, but you were so open minded to like, what are all my different avenues? You were looking into social media content. Like, you were
Yeah, being
basically
an
saying,
influencer. Yeah.
yeah, like let me give myself the benefit of the doubt. Let me understand what I think I'm interested in, what I think my options are. And the beautiful thing is, like, I think people don't always realize, like, you can have one networking call and learn more than enough to figure out, like, is this something I want to learn more about, or is this something I do not like, or am I not sure and I have more questions? But I think people don't even really understand that exploration can be very feasible, it can be very efficient, and it can be very productive. And I just love that you were able to, take the full swath of options before moving forward, and getting
Yeah.
to know, yourself. But, like, why rule anything out? Starting broad early, and then you'll narrow in. But, I just think that's such an amazing thing. I think people come to me and they get so worried about, like, oh, this would be such a big pivot. And it's like, do you even know what that thing is? Like, allow yourself to learn. And, like, the power of how you can learn so efficiently. Like, Amy, like, how long, and everybody's pace is different, but, like, how long would you say you were, like, in the exploration mode for?
Probably like what, maybe 2 months. And I have a couple of some of the things you brought up. I have a couple of points that I think is
Yeah,
important
please,
for
please.
folks to hear. So two things, just like with this part-time thing. I have talked to several women, especially if you are like kind of a high performing, you're a high achieving person, and they've warned me to be really careful about taking a part-time role, because if you are not good about setting those boundaries, which I already know I'm not, I'm like, that's like kind of one of the main things, is I need to really work on that. Then part-time can be very dangerous, because you just negotiated yourself half the pay. And a lot of the times, like, if people work Monday through Friday, right? Or, depending on what your job is, they don't stop Tuesday just because you do. They don't stop emailing, the hours that you've decided you're not working. And so it can creep very quickly into being that you just navigated yourself less pay and you're still doing the same amount of work. So I just like, I'm a little
Yeah, and you have to be
weary of
extremely
part-time.
careful, right? So
Yeah.
if you're exploring part time, I think you need to ask yourself, or ask the person, how do you track somebody's time, or how do you pay? Like, what do you review? Like, is it deliverables, or how does it all work? Like, get very into the nitty gritty before you accept anything. I think part-time can be great, but to your point, yes, you have to be careful that it's not just boundaries but processes of, like, you could even say, who else on this team is, like, part-time? Like, how do you run this with your team? And, like, there are some businesses where they know how to do that and they set you up for success, and there might be other businesses where they're holding you to a standard. They don't track your time. You have to meet this goal and it takes you way longer than you're being paid for. That's a situation you don't want to be in. But I don't want people to feel like part time is not feasible. But,
Right,
I've
but it's
worked
just,
part
you have to
time.
be careful.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I've had many friends that have done it, that they're like, I just basically, I'm still working full time. Or like, it's really not even about the hours that you're putting in, it's about the output and the results. So, like, for example, I have a good friend that works for like one of these old yeller kind of companies. Let's just call it SAP. It's not SAP, but it's like an SAP. That it's like a global big, massive corporation, right?
Yeah.
And she's been doing sales for them for years, and she's gotten so efficient with her time that she always hits her quota. And then as soon as she hits her quota, she's like, goes a tiny bit above, and she stops like working, or she starts to like like basically put it on cruise control. And she's like, I know that I could blow out my number. I could make $50,000, $60,000 more this year than what I was, projected to in like accelerators and bonus things, by blowing out my number. But she goes, you know what's going to happen then after that? And I was like,
Number is going
what
to
is it?
increase.
Right. She said, the next year my quota is going to go up, and then I'm going to have to work way more. And actually, my effective hourly rate is going to go down. So she's like, I'm super content making this amount of money. and and everybody's happy because I'm always hitting the quota, but I'm like, I only work like 20-25 hours a week, and everybody wins.
Yeah.
And so that's something too that I would say, like, if you're considering dancing with the part-time thing and you feel like you're pretty good at setting boundaries, that like
Right.
you could also just do something like that, where like if you're still hitting the goals, nobody cares that you're working silly hours. Like, it doesn't matter. It's really
Right.
all about the
Well, that's
pudding.
why you want to ask questions. You want to understand, are they tracking your time? What are the goals? Are other people meeting those goals? Like if you're agreeing to 10 hours a week, but the goals are unattainable, like you're setting yourself up for a risk. So yeah, there's a lot of questions you need to ask of the person. I think sales is unique, where there is a quota, but with any other function, you would say, what are the deliverables? What are the goals? When would you expect that? And then you, as this, if you're doing this more of in a consulting capacity, you have to ask yourself, what do I think time wise it would take me to achieve whatever it is they expect? So really looking into, all of that. I even had a client where she was doing like a part-time gig, but it was taking her longer than expected. And guess what? As soon as humanly possible, you take a pause, you say to the person, whoever, boss, you say, I understand we agreed to X retainer for the month for this deliverable. We estimated it would take this long. It's actually taking me this length of time. If you want this same email newsletter in the next, 6 months, are you okay to readjust the contract to this? So it's also a choice to say, look, if it's not working, take that pause, not just have a boundary, but actually just tell them and say, do you want to adjust? And here's what it would look like for me to continue doing this, right? So don't ever just like work, without at least speaking up about, oh, you know what, look, this looked different than what we originally thought. Because more
Hmm.
than likely, if you're doing a good job, they're going to want to keep you on. But upfront questions for any part-time contracts is so important, and then reassess and let them know. And if you're doing that good job, they're going to want to work with you to figure out how to make it work for you. And then you'll learn with every part-time contract gig for the future. How do I do this better? How do I make sure I'm setting myself up for success? Like, how do I ask the right questions, essentially, right? Um,
Hmm.
make
Uh,
sense?
yeah. And Rachel, I remembered what flashed on my screen, that it was the question somebody said. I think it was like from one salesperson to another, like, do you have any funny, like, or any good like stories to share from your time in this, in the sales field? And I do. I mean, obviously, I think, having been started out my career in New York and having worked in media and doing ad sales, it was definitely a very interesting job. I had a $25,000 a month expense account at Viacom, and I was encouraged to use that to wine and dine people like the buyers that are doing all the TV and digital media buys for Procter and Gamble, or for Toyota, or for Coca-Cola. And so, I was pretty young, and taking out folks on the agency side that are also like very young, that have, that are managing the bundles of cash that are coming from these different brands, and trying to make sure that like we our partners are choosing Nickelodeon instead of, at the time, Disney or Cartoon Network, which this is just before the streamers kind of changed the game. This was kind of the last bit of where digital and linear was, like, cable was still king. But lots of funny things for sure about like whining and dining clients and taking them out, and just it's very fun. And it was nice too that there's things that I'm like, I would never be able to afford this restaurant, or go to this concert, or take people on this spa day on my own. I can't. I'm like a 23, 24-year old paying for rent in New York. Like, my money, I don't have money. Like, what money? But that expense account was really nice, because the funny thing is, you don't think about, if you're on the sales end, you get to go do all those fun whining and dining things too. And usually they're your idea or your recommendation of what they are, as opposed to, I know some people love like being on the buy end because they're like, well, everyone's trying to court you. But on the sales end, like you get to reap that benefit as well. So without telling anything too scandalous or anything that's not PC, that's basically all the fun client entertaining that I did at the beginning of my career um, was exciting. Not the best for my liver, but it was great.
No, I love it. I mean, look, it's the unintended perks sometimes at work. And I mean, that's important. If you're in an interview, like whether you're in sales or not, getting an expense account or not, I mean, sales is again unique that you're, whining and dining people, but what are the perks? What are the perks that come with this job? And just thinking about what those are.
Yeah,
Um,
which those aren't as valuable to me now as a mom of two.
right.
Like one of my girlfriends, she she does the schmooze, she does the pitch, she has a lot of the things that are part of her job that I was like, oh, I love that. But then she told me that she's out most nights, she's having to like go to events and go schmooze with people outside of work hours, and she's like, I have a 6-year-old, like I don't want to do that now. That's not it, like I'm not in that stage of life anymore. So that's something that I eliminated her role from consideration too, because I'm like, well, I want to still do the schmooze, but I want to do the schmooze between like 9 to 5, or maybe like one business trip a month or
Right.
something, not
Right.
like all the time.
Right. The travel, the pace of travel. So just defining, what do you want? Where are you at in your life? What are those priorities right now? Brain dump that on a piece of paper. And you may need to learn as you go, but it's self-reflection, it's networking with other people, uncovering how things work, how certain roles work, how certain industries work, how part-time gigs work. And when you're learning from others, it's going to help you reveal more and more what it is that you want. But Amy's done such a great job of like just being intentional, right? Like exploration is this full phase before you job search. I don't even think you've applied to anything yet. And even you got an
I
opportunity
have,
that was,
yeah, things
yeah,
have
like
come to me. Yeah.
naturally it's going to arise. But the fact is making a choice to say, let me just spend time and figure out what I want before I apply to anything is such a beautiful thing. I realize if you're job seeking and you can't afford to just stop your job search, sometimes that is the situation, but you can do a lot of this exploration simultaneously and still have the right mindset, which is, I got to figure out what's right for me and just not ignore that. As much as we may need or want a job quickly, it's got to be a fit in the end of the day for everyone to be happy and successful. So, these are just great examples of how you've thought about what you want, how you ask those questions, what keywords you're listening for in the interview, like looking for stable companies. I mean, you're just taking back the reins. And I think job seekers often feel at the mercy of, anyone hiring. But, let's go out of our way to say, here's what I want, and let me go find where that is. To me, I've been thinking a lot about the proactive job search, right? It's not just like, oh, I see this online job application, let me go apply. What about what companies do I think are stable? What companies do I think are growing? What companies are in industries I care about? Let me go meet with people and find the people who are doing the work that align with me and what I want. And do I know what I want, So all these amazing important questions, don't gloss over it, because I know it seems fluffy, but to be perfectly honest, it's a more strategic and effective job search to be meeting with people and figuring out what's a fit for you, versus just
Yeah.
like at the mercy of the job applications. So,
And Rachel,
yeah.
you gave me an awesome, like you gave me a list of questions to ask in these informational interviews. And I was just meeting with a friend earlier this week, or excuse me, yeah, it was on Sunday night. And I mentioned some of these questions, and I was like, well, did you ask your interviewer this and that and that? And then she's like, oh my gosh, I need to know. Like they just called me for I didn't get the last job, but they just said they had a new job. And like now I want to be interviewing them more. And one of the questions that you have that I think is pretty critical for everyone to be asking now, whether it's an informational interview or in person or whatever, is how they envision AI changing the job or changing the industry in the next several years. And just like that is pretty amazing question to ask right now, because all the stuff that's coming out with Chat GPT is like major game changer. And companies are looking for efficiency wherever they can get it. So like you maybe don't want to go into a role that like a bot can totally do that in the next like 2 years,
Right.
so
Right.
it's just something. The AI question is not something to like just put our heads in the sand. Like it's a real thing to ask. I'm like joking with friends, I'm like, I think maybe being a hairstylist is going to become like the new most expensive job you can do, because like I don't, like AI, I guess we'll get that, but maybe not as quickly as some of this other digital stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, things that are have to be from a human. I don't know the next time we're gonna have robot hair cutters, but yes, and how is AI changing things? But in my book, the human is the person that now needs to know how to use the AI. And so, yes, you want to understand what tools and how things are changing. But if you haven't already, start playing around with things to figure out, like, oh, if I was in marketing or if I was in whatever, like, do I know the
Harness
AI
the beast.
tools
Yeah.
to use in my job? Because first of all, you will be the person hired. They will love you for that because you're pushing the way forward. So ChatGPT and AI has come out fast and furious for many of us. So I think it's overwhelming. But if you just honestly, like I actually just got the paid ChatGPT account, and I don't even think you need the paid chat. You can do the free account. But the point is, throw yourself in, even if it's weird and new and uncomfortable. Obviously, ask about it, but upskill in those areas too, just to show that you're going to be the human who's using the AI, and by the way, for careers, I'm guiding people when to use AI and when not to use AI. So, you want to be the expert in, yes, you can ask how they think it's changing, but they're going to want you if you know how to use it, when to use it, why to use it, and why not to use it as well. So again, just taking back the power in so many ways as much as you can, I think, is the key here. And just remembering your power in all of this. I think job seekers feel often just like, we need help from others, but you have so much power and control over your upskilling, your time, your networking, your approach, your exploration, your reflection, your decisions, your priorities. So that's all in your sense of ownership. So just don't forget that. And, Amy's been a great example of how to do that. So yeah, we
Were
are
there
sort
any
of coming at
questions?
the end of our
Yeah.
time here. But please do reach out to both of us. You can find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Surwitz, and then on social media, we usually have an account on most social platforms, either at Woken or at Get Woken. And our website is iamwoken.com. We always offer a free initial chat if you want to chat about you and how you're doing. Please do follow us. We always run free events like this. Amy, where can people find you?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn as well. It's Amy Ecker. Maiden name is Ecker. Last name is Dodd, Dodd. My email is amy.ecker7@gmail.com. And like I said, I love the schmooze. I love the pitch. So if you guys know any roles or companies or things that you think would be really interesting, that you're like, well, I've been needing somebody who's got those skills, like, here I am. Ding ding. I'm right here.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you all for joining. We'll be back for more, and please do reach out, follow us, let us know how we can help. I hope this was helpful, and hopefully, we'll see you all soon. Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.